Again, you've done some great work, bostonsportsjournal.com. You can check it out at BSJ. Greg wrote a long column. According to my internet, it told me it was a 9-minute read. It's a little bit longer than usual. Greg had a lot of words to share. And it's about Belichick and how he builds his roster and how he sees things. So, Greg, what's it say about Belichick that he decided not to sign DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah, first of all, as evidenced by the column, this has been on my mind for a while. I was waiting to write it. I was basically waiting until, to see what they would with DeAndre Hopkins. If they got DeAndre Hopkins, then, it would have changed my thinking. But this has been percolating for a while. And look, I just want to make this clear. This column questioning Bill Belichick's roster building methods, specifically shortchanging the offense, like always, every year. It was not about not getting DeAndre Hopkins. That's not what it was about. It was just, that was sort of the final straw. Right. I mean, as we've talked about in this whole offseason, I mean, when you talked about team needs on this team, cornerback was certainly up there. So Christian Gonzalez, the first round pick, I don't have a problem with that. But we also talked about they don't have any offensive tackles. They have nothing in the pipeline in offensive tackle going forward, and also tight end. They don't have any tight ends signed beyond this season, and wide receiver was the same way until they re-upped Devontae Parker. Kendrick Bourne is a free agent. Devontae Parker was going to be a free agent. So there was just a bunch of things, and then Hopkins was sort of the final straw. And, it's basically, my criticism is just like, Bill doesn't care about offense. He doesn't invest in offense at all. He never signs big money players from the outside. When they had an opening after Rob Gronkowski, quote unquote, retired, did they go out and get the best free agent on the market? No, they middled around at tight end for like 2 years with like Ryan Izzo and other guys, before the Keen Asiasi stuff. When Julian Edelman was breaking down, did they have anything ready? Did they invest in that? No, they've never invested at outside receiver. But compare that to what they do on defense. With defense, they always go out and get what they need. Like, and I'm not talking about, because, of course, I'll hear from Patriots fans who'll be like, what about Antonio Brown? Like, signing a guy 2 days before the start of the season is not addressing the offense. It's symptomatic of the problem that you spent all offseason jerking around on offense with crappy receivers. I remember that offseason. That was when I think they were in Detroit, and I'm looking at these guys, and it's just like, all these horrible receivers, all these horrible tight ends. Like, this is what they're surrounding Tom with going into his final season. And it just became so apparent by the end that, Antonio Brown, because he got himself fired in Oakland, in Vegas, suddenly became available. So they pounced on him at the last second for $10 million, did no background on him. Like, you're trying to tell me that's indicative of Bill Belichick investing in the offense? That's a joke. It's what he always does. He always throws it half-ass at the end with offense, where he never does that on defense. He always shops blue label, top shelf, first day of free agency. Adalius Thomas, Darrelle Revis, who is basically the DeAndre Hopkins of cornerbacks. I mean, probably a little bit better, but similar situation. Guess what? Revis got what he was worth, and they gave it to him, and they won a Super Bowl. When it comes to offense, same situation. Bill doesn't do it. He cheaps out. When they needed a cornerback, when Malcolm Butler wouldn't take their contract, did they cheap out, and sign some middling guy? No, they went out and got Stephon Gilmore, top of the market, first day, first minute of free agency. When they needed an edge rusher, when their draft picks didn't work out. Did they middle along with Chase Winovich and these guys and say, like, all right, we just got to make do with this? No, they went out and they got Matthew Judon in the first minute of free agency. Like, he never does that on offense. He had openings at tackle, tight end in the future, wide receivers, and he just doesn't do anything about it. And like, I understand that it worked for the Patriots way back when, okay? And when they had Tom Brady. But it's a different time. It's a different salary cap league. It's a different offensive-minded league. It's just changed, and Bill hasn't changed. And the thing is like, he's so brilliant coaching defense that he can get away with less. I mean, even look at this year's draft. Yes, right. Gonzalez was a need pick. Like, but in the second and third round, they could have drafted a tackle. They could have drafted a tight end to make sure that they were okay there. Gotten an explosive tight end like the Bills did. They could have gotten a developmental tackle like the Jets did, and they didn't do that. Instead, he picks a depth. He selects depth guys at defensive end and safety where they already have guys. And look, I think Mapu's going to be a star, so great for them. But like, you couldn't have sprinkled in one pick for the offense there to say, all right, I'm going to take care of the offense. I mean, it's a joke. And like, I'm sorry, but if this doesn't work out, if Bill's shortchanging Mac Jones and the offense again, and this went back to Brady, it's not about Mac Jones, and I don't subscribe to this thing where he's trying to sabotage Mac Jones or any of this stuff. But if this works out again, where the Patriots can't score enough points to win games and fail to make the postseason, I'm sorry. This is one of those final straws that Robert Kraft looks at it and says, I gave you chances. It's now 5 years post-Brady. We haven't won a playoff game. You still don't get it with the offense. We're completely opposite than the rest of the NFL, and it's not working, Bill. And if he's not going to change, which he's not going to change, then I do think they need to consider changes, and whether that's taking away pro personnel control from Bill, or Bill being gone outright, forcing him into retirement, or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, this is the same old with the Patriots. All the evidence that we have tells us it's not going to work. If it doesn't work, I think that Bill's feet need to be held to the fire.
The CLNS Media Network is powered by FanDuel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed.
I know Paul Perillo said on NBC Sports Boston over the last 36 hours that he thinks it would have to take a massive disaster for Belichick to be gone. 4 wins, 5 wins this year. I tweeted this out at Nick C Radio. If you want to follow me, at Nick C Radio. All of you follow Greg already. But if this team wins, let's say 7 games, and Belichick, something doesn't happen, somebody needs to take the keys away from Robert. And I love RKK. Dude's legitimately one of the best owners in all of sports for the past few decades. But at that point, it would tell me that he is unwilling to put the bullet in the head of Bill Belichick, figuratively speaking. And my issue with that is, look, this season, to me, Greg, is the ultimate Bill Belichick versus everybody else. We've said that before, but that was when Tom Brady was in town, right? Certain things he'd do, well, this is Belichick versus everybody else. And this is year 4 post-Brady. You have been an average at best football team. That's what you've been. That's what your record has been. That's the way you've coached. That's the way you've played. You've been average. This year is Bill Belichick walking into the room, dropping his stuff on the table and saying, I know more than everybody else. This is the ultimate litmus test in year 4 of roster building. And he either has done it right or he hasn't done it right. And if he gets it right, trust me when I tell you, because Greg and I have done this before, we will be the first in line that say, congratulations to Belichick. He proved us wrong. He proved everybody wrong. This is the way that you can win football. You can put money in special teams when nobody cares about special teams. You can spread the wealth around offensively and not get a true stud on that side of the ball and still be able to do well enough because of scheme and coaching. The offensive line wasn't great, but again, coaching, a few guys in the interior really helped out. They drafted Cole Strange. They bucked the system by doing that in the first round last year, and it all worked out for them. If that happens, then congratulations. I'll be happy. Greg, I think, will be happy, even though he's the wet blanket, because we'll be covering a football team that's good and fun and winning. That's what we all want. And there's no doubt, to me, don't get it twisted, this defense, as queasy and questionable as I see this offense, is as excited I am about this defense. I think this defense has upper echelon ability here. I think this defense, if they play to the tippity top of their potential, they could end up being a top 2 or 3 defense in the NFL. Here's the thing, though. Everybody will say, well, that's how they'll win. And by the way this roster is constructed, as Greg just kind of pointed out to several different things, the making of this roster, the building up to this point, it's rather obvious that that's what Belichick believes. Belichick believes that if we spread the wealth offensively, we score just enough, if we score 24 points a week or so, and we have our defense, which is just unpenetrable, if that's how we're going to win. We're going to win with some good run game. We're going to have Mac in the system. We're going to have guys who know this, all that stuff. And people will look at the rest of the league and they'll say, well, San Francisco has done it with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. And what I say to that is, but San Francisco doesn't do what Belichick is doing. San Francisco pours a lot into the defense. John Lynch, former defensive guy, as we all know, right? He pours a lot into that side of the football. They've got a bunch of studs. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, you know the names. But what else does San Francisco do? They also have Ayuk. They also have Debo. They also have George Kittle. And when they feel like they don't have enough offensively,
they went out and got Christian McCaffrey.
When they feel like they don't have enough to that point, even with those guys, as Greg says, they go out and what I thought was an overpay when you look at price and running backs and all of that. They overpaid to bring McCaffrey in because they knew he was a stud when healthy and he could singularly impact the game, a la the names I mentioned earlier with young quarterbacks. And they said, yeah, we've got Jimmy Garoppolo who can't stay healthy. He's an average quarterback at best. And we got Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. We've got an unknown in Trey Lance at quarterback. We drafted him high, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's been useless to us. So what we're going to do is what I mentioned earlier. We're going to surround the quarterback who is average to maybe slightly above average, 13, 14, 15, ranked in the league. But we're going to surround that guy with weapons. Belichick has not done that. Belichick has approached defense like the Niners approach defense with their decision-making. But he has not given him a top 3 tight end like Kittle, a top 3 running back like McCaffrey, a top 10 wide receiver until last year in Debo. A lot of people think Ayuk could be a top 10 to 15 guy this year. Oh, and by the way, he also gave him Trent Williams at left tackle, a top 2 or 3 left tackle in the game. That's the difference. So if you want to give me the 49ers comparison, it's not even close. Because what the Niners have done is they have surrounded their quarterback with really good players. And Greg, one last point before we get to Athletic Greens and the BSJ member question of the day. One more pushback that I have, because you just mentioned this, about maybe taking the pro personnel decisions away from Bill. Somebody yesterday tweeted at me and said, well, I don't know why people think that Belichick's going to be gone anytime soon because he's 19 wins away from Shula's record. And I said, well, are we just going to allow Belichick to mediocre his way to Don Shula's record? Is Robert Kraft okay saying, all right, he's 19 wins away, so 3 more years of 7 wins when Kraft is in his 80s? And here's the bigger issue. Belichick's not only the coach, Greg. He's also the guy that's shopping for the groceries, as his buddy Parcells once said. And if you are okay with sticking by and standing by Bill Belichick, the head coach, so he can accomplish this Shula record, you're most likely also standing by with him being the GM and making these decisions that he's made that has given us the past 3 years of average play, and going off of if they're average again this year, you're going to give that guy 2 or 3 more years when you've got a decision to make on Mac Jones after this year, whether or not you're picking up his 5th-year option. You're going to put money on Bill Belichick to build the offense the right way, surrounding a brand new QB1. And by the way, for people who just want to get rid of Mac Jones, I've got news for you. It's very difficult to find a legitimate quarterback in the league. Very difficult. You can't just find guys that can lift everybody up. Those guys are top 8 to 10 quarterbacks. They don't become available, everybody. So you're either drafting somebody or you're bringing somebody in paying Kirk Cousins $40 million. It's not easy. So what evidence do you have aside from striking gold in the 6th round with Brady? What evidence do you have that Belichick is going to be capable of bringing that next QB in if it's not Mac and surrounding him and complimenting him the right way? If you bring Belichick back, if you're Kraft, to accomplish this record, which would be fugazi because everybody would be like, oh, yeah, he limped to it. It's like when Strahan got his sack record because Brett Favre fell down. If you're going to do that, then you're also giving the keys to Belichick for the next 5-6 years of your organization because he's making those decisions. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can sacrifice the team's long-term stability so Bill Belichick could be thrown on a couple guys' shoulders and could, do the princess wave to the Gillette Stadium crowd because he broke Shula's record. I just don't think that's going to happen. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Kraft's like, I love you, Bill. I love you. We're going to put a statue of you, and we're going to put that big, ridiculous. They spent more money on the big screen than they've spent on their wide receivers, right? This offseason, probably. A lot of money on that acreage of video now.